and WERQ-FM, HD3 Baltimore.
The views and opinions of the guest and host you hear on 1010 WOLB
are not necessarily those of the staff and management of Radio 1, its sponsors, or advertisers.
Welcome to On the Couch Radio, a show where conversations take place that may not come up at the dinner table. A place where you can be free to express your mental and emotional health without judgment or stigma. A place where nothing is taboo. We are your hosts, Isaiah, Danny, Cheryl, and William. Good evening, Baltimore and beyond. Welcome to another episode of On the Couch Radio. As always, we thank you for choosing this day and this time to join us. Today, folks, we have a good one for you. I'm riding solo as my other co-hosts are in Las Vegas on special assignment. That's right, folks, on special assignment. They're up in their professional game, out there getting some training, some CEUs, some certifications. So we'll see them on the other side when they get back. Have fun, but not too much fun. Today, folks, we got a good one for you. We have two dynamic authors. We're going to jump right in. First, we have Miss Anita Washington. She holds a Master's of Education and a Master's in Business Administration. She is host of That Anita Live TV show, as well as host of the Emotional Happiness podcast, which provides a platform for women to learn, laugh, and more importantly, heal emotionally by learning from the challenges and successes of others. Anita's latest book is titled Family is Not Everything, features trauma stories you can relate to in 7 simple steps to help you heal. Welcome, Anita. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We also have with us Donald Barnett III. He is a public speaker, marriage advocate, and black male relationship expert. To the kids in his community, he is affectionately known as Coach Don, as he coaches soccer and football. He also serves as a mentor to middle schoolers, respectively. Don has been featured in the Black Love doc on OWN TV, Essence Magazine, Great Day Washington, and also in the Congressional Black Caucus. Don is a husband, father, and a new grandfather. His book is entitled Manhood on the Line, Real Man Owns His Ish, and we'll refer to it as that throughout the show. Welcome, Don. How are you?
How's it going, brother?
Going well. Going well. We're just going to jump right in. Anita, very interesting title. Family is Not Everything.
Yes.
How did you decide on that title?
I decided on that title because what irritated me the most is when people did something I call family shaming, whether it was in the office or in a friend's circle, and where they tried to make people feel guilty or shameful for not spending what's called, I guess, the holiday time with their family. And I need people to recognize that you never know what you're sending somebody back into. So be careful when people say that they're not going to spend the holidays the traditional way.
We definitely got to dig into that. We definitely have to dig into that. Don, how did you choose the title for your book? And can you give us a little backdrop?
Well, I chose the title for my book based on the fact that really it was really just about me taking accountability for my actions throughout my marriage. You know, some things that happened in my wife that with my wife and I that shared on the that I shared on the show about my wife having an emotional affair. When I took a step back to really look at the whole situation in totality, I realized that a lot of that was really on me because I wasn't being a husband, I wasn't being attentive. I was basically an autopilot, going to work, coming home with my kids, but I really wasn't paying any kind of attention to my wife or really had any kind of time for my wife. And there were times where we just really weren't getting along, so I really just didn't want to be bothered. So I allowed, because I wasn't present, someone else became present in my situation.
And how did you decide on the title, Manhood on the Line, A Real Man Owns His Ish?
Well, because in life, there was a lot of things that I went through in life, but in going through those things, I had to realize that I had to take responsibility for some of the things that were really on me. Even like down to, me and my wife not getting along. A lot of things that we were arguing about really had nothing to do with me and my wife, but things that happened to me in my past, in my childhood, in regards with my own personal mother. So a lot of times my wife felt the brunt of that.
Okay. And Anita, I wanted to kind of get into a little more of the backdrop in terms of family is not everything.
Okay.
Can you kind of bring that to life to us a little more? The whole family dynamic and the road you've walked and kind of how you get to this point now?
Well, what I lay out in the book is when I say trauma stories you can relate to, I lay out maybe 5, 6 very traumatic stories that happened in my childhood. Anywhere from my father trying to burn the house down 3 times to my brother being a batterer, and where I bring in the domestic violence, hit but not the target, meaning that in certain circumstances where he was beating his girlfriend or his wife, I was the witness. So witnesses have effects to traumatic events the same way that those who get directly hit do. Mm-hmm. And then I end the book with a number of stories that talk about what real love is in a family setting, and where I talk about my great aunts, my grandfather, and how they provided what the immediate family did not.
Okay. And one of the themes that emerged from reading some of your book was the unfair and even at times inhumane treatment of those accused of mental health crimes, if you will. Mm-hmm. And by that, I say that very tongue-in-cheek, very sarcastically, when someone who is someone may be accused of having a mental health breakdown or accused of wanting to harm themselves. Mm-hmm. I notice how I tied the line between childhood trauma becomes adult dysfunctional behavior. Absolutely.
Because I didn't have a voice as a child, and I wasn't regarded or respected as a child. Mm-hmm. In my adult relationships, I didn't really verbalize what I thought or how I felt because I felt alone and scared in certain circumstances where I didn't have anyone. Mm-hmm. So I ended up in a situation into where somebody accused me of trying to commit suicide. Okay. And then this person hadn't seen me in weeks and was halfway around the world. Right. But because he wanted to, I'd say, retaliate, that is the process that he chose. And what I noticed, was it 5 or 7 days that you remained? 3. Okay, it was 3. Okay. Mm-hmm. And from how you were handled by the police and the psychiatrist, it was almost like, I'm a person. I'm real. Right. I noticed that. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Where when the police arrived at the house, nobody ever asked me, was I okay, or asked me questions to try and determine what my mental stability is. Mm-hmm. It was more so of, we're here, we're going to put you in handcuffs, we're going to check the house, we take you downtown. I sit there for hours before anyone even addresses me. Then when a lady does address me, she doesn't tell me who she is or what her name is. She just sits down and starts filling out this form. When I left the house, the policewoman told me that I would be gone like maybe 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. I ended up being gone 3 days. Mm-hmm. And into the process, I had no clue of what I was in for or what I was being taken for or booked for. Wow. For those that are just tuning in, we have with us Anita Washington, author of Family Is Not Everything, and Donald Barnett III, author of Manhood On The Line, A Real Man Owns His Ish. If you'd like to join the conversation, please give us a call at 410-481-1010, 410-481-1010. Don, your book is absolutely chock full of nuggets of wisdom and healing and affirmation. But before we get to that, can you give us a backdrop in terms of what were some of the highs, what were some of the lows before you got to the point of, okay, I have to deal with some of these ugly truths, as you call them in the book? Well, I think just going through life, just really not realizing what you're doing, because you know how you think you're okay, but you're really not okay. It's like you've lived in like dysfunction so long that it has now become normal. Mm-hmm. Well, I think
my wife has been on me forever to go to counseling, and I would not do it. I just wouldn't do it because I thought I was fine. Like, you go, and I just think, looking back on the fact that I have children, and I just felt like I couldn't go through life like this anymore, feeling a victim to the situations in life, dealing with my mother and my father dying as a teenager when I graduated from high school, and then my grandmother, who was really like the only mother I really ever knew, dying when I was like 12, 13. It was just like a bit much. And no one in my community ever said, hey, maybe you need to talk to somebody. Maybe it was just kind of like, okay, you'll be fine. You'll get over it. You'll be okay. And we're talking about the two people that meant everything to me, my father and my grandmother, gone. Now I got to live life and try to figure it out, and that just led to a lot of different things, like a lot of promiscuous relationships with women, just, I don't know, altercations at times with other men, arguments with my wife, and things of that nature. So I was just like spiraling out of control, but just didn't realize it. And then when I made the choice to go to counseling, which I didn't want to do, and I talk about that in the book, I made my wife do everything. Like, you want me to go? You make the appointment. You do this. You do that. And I want a male doctor, all of that. And I mean, man, she had that thing knocked out in no time.
She lined it up for you.
Oh my God, she was serious about that thing.
Check.
So this is really, there's a lot in what you're saying, because I think that what you're saying is how most of us men are socialized. It's kind of sort of swept under the carpet. Don't really show your emotions. You don't really need all that. You'll be good. Just hang out.
Yeah. I'm good. Like, I'm good.
Right. It's kind of how men are socialized. Live it up. Just have all the fun you want. You can drink it away. You can sex it away.
Right.
Meanwhile,
exactly.
Women are socialized. Don't upset your father. Don't disappoint your mother. Be a good girl. So it's almost like we start off at a disadvantage, if you will. How much of that would you say was part of your story in terms of how we're socialized?
Wow. I mean, because growing up for me, it was just after my grandmother died, it was my father and I. So, you know how it is when your dad lets you get away with like a lot of stuff. There was stuff that I got away with, like with my dad, that I would never in a million years attempt or even try, like with my grandmother. And like, I'll tell anybody today, like, I got more whoopings from my grandmother than I ever did from both of my parents, like combined, because I mean, she did not have none of that. You feel me? So, and it's like my dad, man, he was just really trying to keep food on the table and the lights on. So he really didn't trip over what he saw as the small stuff, but really, like, it was big stuff, because I went through a point in my life, man, where like I really couldn't read, you know what I'm saying? And it was just kind of like I struggled as a youth with reading. That's why, I'm so passionate about like our nonprofit Forever Free Books and going into the school with literacy and reading to kids and things of that nature, because you're talking to a dude, man, that struggled with reading like bad. You know what I'm saying? I was that kid that would like, okay, I'm the third person down, so I'm gonna read the third paragraph. I'm trying to figure out all the words, so when it come to me, I'm not stumbling and all that, because if somebody laughs, then that's an altercation.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Or like, I conveniently have to go to the bathroom. So, dealing like with things of that nature, and then just trying to just maintain and live life and trying to be like somewhat normal per se, it's like you just kind of tuck a lot of things away, in life. And then you just, next thing you know, man, you like 30 years old and you're like, dang, like, wow. But it's normal at that point, like you said, you drink it away, you sex it away, or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
But both of you all talk about your parents. Don, you shared with great detail very painful memories and interactions with your mother. And Anita, you share a gripping story of your father. Both of you admit that the relationships with your parents adversely impacted you as adults. Can we explore this a little bit? Can we kind of dig into this? Because I think there's a metaphor there that if that trauma, if that situation is not dealt with, it's going to continue to resurface. So would you like to start, Anita?
Sure. The story that I shared was the one that I mentioned earlier, as far as my father trying to set the house on fire. Is that the one you were talking about?
Sure.
And I caught him the second time. The first time I was a toddler. The second time I caught him with kindling newspaper set up against the wood of the back of the house, trying to catch it on fire. I did manage to get the faucet started to wet the house, wet the newspaper, and I wet him entirely. That the anger within me bubbled to the point that I actually wanted to fight with him. But he didn't verbally say anything, and when he walked past me, he walked clearly away from me to get past me. How that festers and comes out in adult dysfunctional behavior is in interactions with I guess dates or how I view relationships, and where I never looked at anything less than more than, say, 6 to 9 months. Too afraid to get stuck with the wrong one, because I've seen how bad marriages can tear down the rest of your life. It's something that I've seen in friends of mine that have similar backgrounds, and a few of them have been married, say, 2 or 3 times, and they still haven't dealt with the issue.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely. Until we deal with it, it's going to continue to surface. If you'd like to join the conversation, we'd love to hear from you. 410-481-1010, 410-481-1010. Don?
Well, my parents, as I indicated in the book, were divorced or separated before I could even remember us being a family. So, I did like a lot of the house shuffle between my dad's and my mom's. And then as I got older, I know those trips started to become less and less. Or sometimes, my mother would say she was coming and she would never come. And, I felt like a lot of resentment about that. But, as a child, you keep hope alive, per se. And, like, I remember I would be talking to her on the phone and she would tell me all this stuff. Yeah, I'm going to get you this. I'm going to buy you that. And it would never happen. To this day, that's why, I never tell my kids something that I know that I may not be able to do, or I'm not going to be able to do right away. And sometimes, when it comes to my children, I'm guilty of overcompensating. Okay. They may want 1 pair of sneakers and I buy them 2 or 3 pairs of sneakers, so even down to like, equipment for like sports, when football comes around, I got to make sure my son has like everything. And, they give you the stuff at school for free, you know what I'm saying? Right. But I'm like, oh, do you need this? Do you want that? Well, maybe you should get 2 of it. You know what I'm saying? Just because, as a parent, I just want to make sure, like, man, because I know at times, like, I didn't have it like that as a kid. And then when my mother said she was going to do it, she never did it, and then when my father did do it, you know what I'm saying? I knew it came at a great cost or expense to him in terms of like something wasn't getting paid.
Yeah. So in one instance, it's like overcompensating. In another one, it's avoidance. Right. But it's still adult dysfunctional behavior that bubbles to the top every time.
Right. How did that spill over into your adult relationships?
In regards to just in general with my wife, or what?
However you'd like to answer it.
Well, I think how it spilled over into my adult relationships in terms of I always sought comfort from like women. I don't know. I just like to be around a lot of women. I dated a lot of women, messed around with a lot of women. And, if someone told me, oh, well, I don't have time for you today, I immediately saw that in my mind as like rejection. Like, well, and I immediately tied that back to my mother. Well, you're rejecting me. You're not giving me what I want. So I'm going over here. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's like, you live life like that. And it creates problems, especially because like when you get married, it's like you just can't like run to the next woman, or you're not supposed to anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
And it's like, you know, those kind of things led to like flirting for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, having inappropriate conversations with women. You know, even though, you know, we didn't do anything, or it's just the fact that having the conversation and knowing in the back of my mind, like, man, I bet if I wanted to, I probably really could. But then, you know, something like clicks back into reality. You know what I'm saying? But those kind of things are what I like to call like, you know, like foolish conversations or things of that nature. And, you know, I spoke about these things in counseling. You know, I even talked about it like with my wife. You know what I'm saying? It's all tied into that whole piece like of abandonment and rejection that I felt like from my mother. And realistically, it's like, you know, when you think back on it, it's like, well, dang, this was really like my issue, and really nothing any woman, not even my wife, could have done to help me until I helped myself.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? And I helped myself by going to counseling.
Right. Okay. And we definitely going to dig into that, because a lot of us just won't go, you know, and so
it's like taboo in the African American community.
Absolutely. Not only in our community, it's pretty taboo, just in general.
Hey, let me tell you, man, once I started going to counseling and I realized I could talk and talk and talk, and they was just going to listen. And then when I stopped talking, they would give me like little like nuggets and feedback on how to change, or maybe this is why you think like that. Or I even asked, like, why do I think like that? Why do I do that? Mm-hmm. And you know, and I'd be like, oh, wow. Because initially I did not like counseling. I was just kind of like, but then once I kind of like, during the first session and we started getting into it, I liked it. And then when the first session was over, I was just like, no, it can't be over. I'm just getting used to this thing. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So what would you say to the person who's kicking it around, they're toying with the idea, I don't really know, I don't really need all that.
I would say,
what would you say to that person?
I would say go, because I think, look at it like this. You have nothing to lose by going and everything to gain if you go and it's successful. You see what I'm saying? I mean, if push come to shove, if you feel like it's not working, you're just going to be in the same spot anyway. So why not take a chance on changing your life?
Absolutely. Anita, I wanted to ask you, I wanted to dig into your book a little more. I've always said this, and I developed this sentiment from working with children in the foster care system. Your family is who you love and who loves you. Tell me what you think about that. Your family is who you love and who loves you.
Yeah, that depends on who you love and who loves you. Because a lot of the times we like to stay stuck in a title. And the person that has the title doesn't necessarily have the qualifications to fulfill the duties and responsibilities of the title. Mm-hmm. So where in my book, where I talk about fatherless daughters, and that if women would just take a step back and look at the men that they did have in their lives while they were growing up and what impact those men had, whether they were coaches, preachers, priests, teachers, uncles, godfathers, whomever they may be, to put that collage together. Those are the people that showed you true love.
Right.
That's who your family is.
Right. Absolutely. And, you know, what made me kind of stay stuck on that a little bit is so often children that are in foster care, they will always want to be connected or at least know about their biological family. And there's this big emphasis put on blood. That's my blood relative. That's my blood relative. Well, the reality of it is oftentimes blood relationships can be the most.
All right. Merely because we share a common ancestor does not make us family. It makes us relatives, but it doesn't make us family. A good friend of mine says, blood doesn't make us family, loyalty does. So if you really sit with that for a second and think about the people that you have in your life, I mean, even the quote that says we become the compilation of the 5 people we spend the most time with. All of that gives you an idea of who you are as a person and who you can call family.
Absolutely. If you'd like to join the conversation, please give us a call at 410-481-1010, 410-481-1010. And to the caller we had, please give us a call back. I apologize. I missed that. That wasn't on our engineer. That was on me. Anita, I wanted to ask you, how do families become so dysfunctional? Because here we are sitting at the cusp of the holiday season. It's not far off. It's coming. There's an air of excitement, but then there's an air of dread for some.
Yes.
How do we get to that, and what nuggets do you have for the person who's I don't really want to go, but I gotta go, or which talk to us.
Number one is to thine own self be true. Mm-hmm. So if you can't think of some coping skills or some guards that you can have so that you can handle the holidays around toxic family, maybe you need to get with a mental health counselor or a therapist. Look in my book to try and find some tidbits on how you can handle the holidays with toxic family.
Okay. And that's a good segue. How can folks purchase your book, and how can our listeners connect with you?
Listeners can connect with me on all social media platforms as that Anita Live. They can get the book at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And I think families end up in a dysfunctional place through the generations. Whether it's one incident that happens in a family and we don't talk about it or flush out our feelings, but we internalize them. And then that comes out as energy. And we pass that energy and that pain as a pathology from one generation to another. So, and where one generation may deal with it with alcoholism, the next generation may deal with it with womanizing, the next generation may deal with it with avoidance. But it all stems back to that one incident that happened earlier in the family that we still have not dealt with.
Absolutely. Now, some people feel like no contact is best when it comes to having experienced some level of abuse. Some people believe that no contact is best. Some people believe that it can be worked out and contact can be maintained. Do you have an opinion on that?
I think it depends on the family.
Okay.
And it depends on the toxicity, the level of toxicity of the family.
Okay.
Because sometimes when you express yourself to someone and say, hey, what you do really upsets me and I would appreciate it if you not do that anymore, that may discontinue the behavior, and then you can continue to be around those family members. But in other cases, it doesn't matter how much you express yourself, whether it's in written form, in verbal form, or through another person speaking on your behalf. They continue to say they think it's funny at 40 to lock you out of the house and make you sleep outside. Or they think it's funny to grab you and put you in a headlock and put their knuckles into your head at 55. There's just certain things you have to determine how much you're going to take. And when you can't take it, then you have to individually make the decision between whether there's going to be contact, what kind, or no contact. Okay.
Okay. And that's a very personal and private decision for each person.
Wow. Yeah, that's good.
Don, what nugget of wisdom would you share with the man who's listening, who is currently consumed by anger? He really doesn't have a firm footing with his emotions, and his wife, his girlfriend, whoever, they're kind of sort of catching the brunt of it. What nuggets of wisdom do you have for that man who's listening right now?
Well, I would most definitely encourage the brother to go to counseling, but also too, a lot of times, and I can also speak for myself, sometimes you got to change your circle, the people that you're around, because a lot of times some of your closest friends, and they mean well, but you know, they'll tell you, oh man, you all right, you good, but you like my grandma said, you crazy in a bed bug. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times your friends will be dealing with the same things that you're dealing with. And because they're dealing with the same issues, they don't know how to give you the advice you need so that you can move forward. So I would definitely say that, you know, try to talk to someone who's going to give you an independent opinion about your situation, and try to move toward counseling. I mean, even if you start off with maybe going like 20 to 30 minutes initially, you know, and then maybe work yourself up to an hour, but at least go. And maybe you don't want to go into the office. You know, they have, you know, you can speak to a therapist on the telephone, you know, if you don't feel comfortable initially going into the office. But I say do whatever you can do, you know, to get you back, to get your mental state back. back on track, not just for like your loved ones, but for yourself, so you can live a purpose-driven life.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. Can you tell our audience how they can purchase your book, and how our listeners can connect with you?
Well, right now you can do pre-orders on MrDonaldBarnett.com. The book will be released later this October, so then you'll be able to get it on Amazon and other platforms. And then also, too, I'm having a book launch on October 27th at Mahogany Books in Anacostia from 2 to 4. And also on social media, you can find me at Don Barnett with 3 eyes on the end on Instagram and Twitter, and at The Real Barnetts on Instagram and Twitter. That's a platform that my wife and I share together, Tanya Barnett of the Real Wife Movement.
Absolutely, and I definitely want to ask you about that. But before I do that, as you both know, we are a mental health show. What is the mental health takeaway from your book? What would you say is the mental health takeaway?
I would say from my book, once you read it from beginning to end, you can see that, I did have some challenges. I did have my share of struggles and things of that nature, but I took a chance on myself and I went to counseling. I listened. Like I said, I made my wife do everything. I'm like, if you're serious about me going, then you do everything.
You sound very serious about that.
I was.
But she called us bluff, though.
I was serious. I was like, if you think I need counseling, then you find the doctor. You see if the insurance takes it. All of this stuff. Oh, and I'm not driving like no hour to go to no therapy or nothing. You do all the work, and I want a man to be my counselor. And she did it. I mean, like in record time. So I mean, big ups to my wife, Tanya Barnett of the Real Wife Movement. Check her out if you don't know who she is. But I mean, I love that woman, man. She cared about me at a time when I didn't care for myself, So, I think, just like put your hands together for that. Cause like I was real. I mean, dude, you know me, man. And it's like, man, I had some real different kind of ways a long time ago, So, but to God be the glory. I've come a long way.
There's redemption.
You know what I'm saying?
There are many mental health takeaways from your book. Miss Anita, what would you say is a mental health takeaway from your book?
That you have to fight for healthy.
Okay.
It doesn't matter whether you're in a bad marriage, a bad family, your work environment, doesn't matter what it is. You have to fight for healthy. Okay.
And, one thing I wanted to touch on, there's a lot floating around the internet related to mastery of emotions, particularly in circles that market to men. The sentiment is that a man must learn to master his emotions in order to be effective. Starting with you, Dawn, I'd love to hear you all's opinion, and then I'll share mine. Do you believe that sentiment that a man must learn to master his emotions in order to be effective?
I definitely think you have to have some kind of control over your emotions, because if you don't have it together, then I don't know how you realistically could expect someone else to really listen to you or hear from you. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of times we do a lot of faking it until we make it, but I think there's just some times where you just can't fake it, and you really have to really have self-control of that thing. You really gotta have a hold on that thing so you can help someone else. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And I, and my thing was I'm able to do that now just through therapy. I go to an awesome men's group at church, and I do things. I put good things in my mind. You know what I'm saying? To just change the narrative within myself and in my thinking. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So, with that being said, though, I do believe, you can do it, but you have to put some things in place to be able to do it.
Okay. If you'd like to join the conversation, please give us a call at 410-481-33 1010, 410-481-1010. Anita, I know this is, we're talking about emotional health, emotional wellness. This is right down your lane. Must the man learn to master his emotions in order to be effective?
For me, flat out, I say yes.
Okay.
Because for me, it's the difference between reacting and responding.
Okay.
And when you react, a lot of the times you regret either what you said or how you behaved. But if you take a minute and you're the master of your emotions and you respond, then you're able to be a lot more effective with whomever it is that you're interacting with.
Okay. And I'm going to share my opinion, and I mean, let's have some banter on this. I think that the word master of emotions creates, in a sense, undue pressure. Now, I certainly want my son or my daughter, for that matter, I mean, a person in general, to be able to navigate the terrain and not be pulled all over the place, because that's really, I think, what's being insinuated when we talk about mastering your emotions. Yeah. But as opposed to using the term mastering emotion, I would say we need to know how to make during the game, adjustments. So if we can no longer play a 3-1-2 defense, we make an adjustment. And so our emotions are going to always be kind of fluid. They're always going to be moving. So I just think to say master emotions is just an added layer of stress, if you will.
Well, it's got to be catchy to be seen.
Okay.
For anybody paying any attention to it. And when you use the sports analogy, the only ones that are going to pay attention to that is men. You might get a few females, but for instance, a lot of the times when they might advertise something in pink when they want women to notice it. Okay.
How would you reframe that for perhaps a female audience or for all audience? Instead of an in-game adjustment, how would you reframe that?
But those are the words that I use when I talk to women, and I tell them, you have to become the master of your emotions.
Okay.
A lot of women are head of household. A lot of women are single moms. They're trying to get to the corner office in the corporate life. They need to learn how to master their emotions.
Don, from a relationship perspective, is this healthy? Is it healthy that women learn how to master their emotion, or does it give off the sentiment that a woman may not be emotionally available because she won't cry around you, she won't give you her real emotion, she's keeping everything so strong? From a relationship perspective, is this best?
I think from a relationship perspective, like, for example, when I think of mastering emotions in a relationship, like if me and my wife are having like a discussion where like we're just not seeing things eye to eye, when I think of mastering my emotions, I think of, okay, let me hear what my wife is saying and let me respond to her in a way that's not offensive or harsh or aggressive. Do you see? That's what I'm thinking about mastering emotions. But like if it's a situation where my wife feels she needs to cry or I need to cry, then I'm going to cry. That's what it is, you know, and I don't think that makes me any less of a man. I don't think that at that point in time I'm not mastering my emotions. It's like, yo, I'm showing, you know, my emotions and I'm expressing myself, and it's non-offensive, you know. But I think you know you have to. It's I guess maybe to use a sports analogy, on certain terrain you use certain cleats. Do you see what I'm saying? And on this terrain with my wife, it's okay for me to cry and things of that nature. But if I'm in a boardroom, you know, I gotta hold it together. I can't be crying.
Right.
I'm being questioned.
Right. Right. I get it. I definitely get it. Don, can you tell us about the Black Love doc on TV that you and your wife have been a part of and the work you all are doing with that?
Well, yes, we were on season 2, episode 3, and basically we were talking about accountability. That's when my wife had spoke about the fact that she was having an emotional affair, and what I shared with you previously, that, you know, I took responsibility for that because I was just not present. I mean, I was a good husband. I was doing all the things that, you know, how you say, my reasonable service, checking all the boxes, making sure the mortgage was paid, making sure her car note and tuition was paid, making sure the kids had what they had needed. But like present with my wife. I wasn't there, you know. I was physically there, but I wasn't like mentally in tune and engaged. And then that allowed someone with, you know, flattery to say, hey, you're doing good things. All the things that I probably should have been doing, you know, and
you look nice in that today, girl.
Right, exactly. You see what I'm saying? Right. You know, the same game as men, we probably played 101 times, you know, coming up like, oh, girl, you look nice. You know, so it was almost like, yeah, I put myself in that situation because I wasn't taking care of home like I should have been taking care of home in terms of just being present with my wife.
How did you get to that point where you were able to face that? Because that is, you know, men, we can be very ego-y, if that's even a word. I know it isn't, but we can be very ego-y and full of pride. How did you even get to that point? Because somebody needs to hear this. Somebody is struggling and they need to hear this.
Well, how I got to that point is because, you know, obviously, I do go to church. I am saved, and there's, you know, and my thing is, you know, and like my grandmother always told me, like, son, you need to pray. You know, my grandmother was the first person that ever taught me about praying and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, really, man, I really just kind of like, when that whole situation went down, I just really kind of referred back to that. You know, I mean, you know, yeah, me and my wife, we were talking about it, but at some point, you know, I just had to face that thing myself in the room, just me and God, and looking at it like, Don, what did you do? And, you know, once I was able to come to grips with that, it's like, dang, dude, you messed up, man. And you know, and I mean, for real, like, there was times in my life where I could be like a really hard person, hard at heart person, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, I felt compassion and empathy for my wife because I know that I brought this to my house. You know, my actions led to this. And a lot of times that's the hardest thing for a person to do, especially when the whole world can look at you and say, yeah, you were right for going off. You know, yeah, you were justifiable in your actions, but nah, man. I mean,
grace is a powerful thing.
Exactly. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's like, nah, dude, you was wrong, man. And it's like, and really, man, that kind of freed me up too. You know, just owning it. Like, yeah, man, you was wrong. You know, dead wrong. So, you know, based on the fact that I owned it and I titled the book, you know, it's like we were able to move forward with that.
Do you think, and this is a real sticky question, do you think you could have found the same level of forgiveness had it not just been an emotional affair, had it actually been an actual affair?
Yeah, because I mean, when I'm telling you I was wrong, I mean, like, I was wrong. There's no two ways. There's no two ways about it. I mean, what do you call it? Like an emotional affair. See, when somebody really, it's all the same thing. And I say that. And when you're thinking about like an emotional affair, that's even worse because that means somebody's got your wife's heart, her mind. You know what I'm saying? It's like when you get a woman's mind, man, it's like, yo, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, you could sleep with somebody and then get up and then boom, boom, you going about your business. But, man, if somebody got your heart, your mind, you know what I'm saying? It's
a different dynamic.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
It's definitely a different dynamic. Anita, what would you say is the difference between setting a boundary that I can't go to the Thanksgiving dinner, I can't go to the birthday party, setting that boundary or in finding forgiveness? Because oftentimes we will be admonished to, well, you have to forgive. You have to figure out a way to move beyond. Where's the balance when it comes to family dynamics?
The balance is in the difference between forgiveness and giving them access to do the action to you again. Okay. Because just because you've set that boundary or you're not going doesn't mean that you're still upset or pissed or mad. You don't want you to put yourself back in the same situation again. So therein lies the boundary.
That's powerful.
If you know you can go to the Thanksgiving dinner or to the birthday party and the incident, whatever it is, isn't going to happen. Or maybe you can do the first hour before that person shows up, or once you get to the birthday party or Thanksgiving dinner and you notice, hey, things are starting to get a little out of line, this is my time to leave, because you are respecting your own boundaries and fighting for your own sense of healthy.
Okay, so is it possible that you could decide to not attend said event and still find forgiveness? Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, like I said, it's the difference between forgiveness and granting them access again. For instance, everything that happens in the book, I don't have any malice for it. I'm not angry. This isn't a get back at anybody. But I chose to cut my family off because the incidents never stopped happening. Mm-hmm. Every time I was around them, in one situation or another, it would happen again. Some sense of dismissal or disrespect or some physical altercation. I chose to cut them off because, one, I'm fighting for my own sense of healthy, but two, I'm not granting them access again. So even up to this point, it remains a distant relationship? Yes. Okay. Because somebody needs to hear that, because oftentimes friends, yes, other distant family will try to shove family down your throat. And sometimes it's just not feasible. Right. If a situation has become so damaging, so hurtful, that doesn't mean forgiveness can never be found or grace can never be given. But like you said, you're fighting for your healthiness, for your wholeness. Yes. What would you say to the person, Anita, who is still stuck and they're struggling with their family dynamics? They're struggling from perhaps abuse from childhood or trauma from childhood. What do you have to say to that person who might be listening? I would say to that person, number one, get a sense of your own inner peace and quiet, because a lot of the trauma that you went through is replaying itself in negative thoughts, and it may be in low self-esteem and low self-confidence. Get away from the situation, get your own inner peace and quiet, and then figure out your process to get to a healthy place. Whether it's the 7 steps in my book, whether it's going to see a therapist, whether it's calling a counselor or signing up for e-counseling, however you can begin that process, even if it's just buying a journal and beginning to write out all of your feelings. That's a sense of working through a lot of the trauma that you've experienced. Okay. Don, what advice do you have for a woman who is dating or married to a man who's emotionally out of control? What would you offer her?
Well, I would say, as long as, he's not putting his hands on you or anything crazy like that, just if you're able to bear it, continue to try to encourage him, even if you have to do that from afar, because it's just gotten to the point where, you just mentally can't deal with it. I would just say, and continue to encourage him, continue to pray for him, continue to talk to him, and sometimes just listen. Because sometimes I know that, when I was dealing with my situation, it just really helped when my wife would just listen. Just really just listen. Just don't say nothing. Just listen, hear what I'm saying. And maybe that, because, a lot of times, men, if you just pay attention long enough, we'll tell you what we're really thinking. You just got to pay attention. No doubt about it. We'll tell you what we're really thinking. And sometimes we may not even mean to tell you, but it's it'll come out. But, I would say continue to encourage him. Continue to be there for him. Like I said, as long as he's not putting his hands on you or being physically abusive or anything like that. And, in a situation like that, you look out for yourself and protect yourself and your children. But yeah, just really try to just be there and encourage him, be that coach or that cheerleader. Right. And one of the things you said, I just want to underscore, even though that it may not be physically abusive or anything like that, if it comes to the point where it's just too much emotionally. Right, exactly. Because if it could be too traumatizing emotionally. Yep. I mean, it really could be. Exactly. So, at any point,
you have a right to
do what you got to do for you.
Right. Some people make it out the valley and their relationships are better. Not everybody does.
Right, exactly.
You know. Anita, can you tell us a little bit about that Anita live TV show and the Emotional Happiness podcast that you are host of?
The television show airs in Northern Virginia on the Channel 10 Lifestyle Channel, and it's a platform in where I interview women that have either been through devastating circumstances to share their tips and techniques on how they've rise to live a relentless life again. Okay. I also interview various therapists and counselors in the DMV so that people can go to my channel and watch the mannerisms, hear the answers, get the voice of various therapists so they can say, oh, okay, you know, well, maybe I can go see her or I can go see him. Mm-hmm. That hopefully breaks down the stigma between going, because therapists are real people too. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them have been through circumstances that led them into the helping profession in the first place. So
wonderful. And the podcast, is that something new or? No,
the podcast is just as old as the television show. It's the audio for the television show that people that either like to consume their content simply in audio and don't want to watch the video or don't have time to sit and watch the video. They can listen to it in traffic. They can listen to it while they're jogging.
Ingenious idea. Really, really. Don, let me ask you this. We're kind of coming down to the end here, but I wanted to ask you, what was the benefit to your children for dad becoming whole?
Man, I mean, you know, I was always like, you know, a good father, you know what I'm saying? I think the true benefit of, you know, me going to counseling and how my children benefit from that, man, I think they're able to see their father just like be normal, have a normal relationship with their mother. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Not all the like going back and forth. You know what I'm saying? Because there were times like when my wife and I would argue, like my children will be present, you know, and by no means do I want my children to think that that's normal. I don't want my son to think like, well, that's what you do. I don't want my daughters to think like, well, that's what men do. That's acceptable. No. So, I'm glad that I was able to change that narrative. So, you know, now they see, their mother and I just having like a healthy relationship. And it's so funny, like our oldest daughter came home one time, you know, she's in the military, and, she was like, she told her mother, she was like, man, she was like, you and dad ain't argued one time since I've been home. You know, so it's like,
it was noticeable.
Yeah, it was just noticeable, man, you know. And life is just so much easier, man, because you realize like things are not as heavy as you really try to make it in your head. It's just really not. When you take a step back to look at it, it is not that heavy. It is really just not that heavy, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Would you? How long have you all been married?
It'll be 20 years in June.
I just wanted people to know, that there's been
some time on the rock.
Absolutely,
yeah.
There's been many valleys, and you all are still standing.
Yeah, God's grace, man.
You all are still standing. What would you like to leave? You got 60 seconds. What would you like to leave with our audience? Well,
I would like to, especially like the men, you know, if you're on the fence about going to counseling, please go. Please go. It's only going to take like maybe a few minutes of your time to just really get in there and then get comfortable. And once you start talking about whatever issues you got going on, believe me, your family will appreciate you for it, because a lot of times we don't see who we really are, like our wives and our children may see us. And then when the counselor points these things out to you, it's like, oh man, like, yeah, I need to get a hold of that. So, yeah, I would definitely encourage brothers to go to counseling. Who cares about what somebody says about you? They're going to talk about you anyway. So,
good, bad, or indifferent, right?
Exactly. So you might as well let them talk about you for doing something that's going to help you and help your family.
And would you tell our audience how they can connect with you and pre-order your book?
MrDonaldBarnett.com. You can pre-order the book, and I'm on social media at Don Barnett with 3 eyes on the end on Instagram and Twitter, and at The Real Barnett's on Instagram and Twitter with my wife, Tanya of The Real Wife Movement.
30 seconds, Miss Anita. Can you tell our audience where they can connect with you, where they can get your book, and leave them with a nugget?
You can get the book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The book is Family Is Not Everything. The website is That's Anita Live. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram are also That Anita Live. And the nugget that I would leave you with is to start the journey. Whether it's family dysfunction, childhood trauma, a bad divorce, whatever your trauma or your tragedy was, and we all have them, don't allow the emotional baggage to keep you from living the life you secretly crave to live. Start
Powerful.
your journey.
With an exclamation mark. Thank you, folks, for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to On the Couch Radio. And as always, you can join us every Monday from 5 to 6 p.m. right here on WOLB 1010 AM. You can also find us on the TuneIn app or Facebook and Instagram as On the Couch Radio and on Twitter as OTC Radio 1. If you have questions or comments, you can email us at onthecouchradio@gmail.com.